already. Before I start, how many of you are, by show of hands, designers, creators, tinkerers, makers? Wow, almost everybody. It's going to be a fun morning. I really already enjoying it. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jeevak. I was born in India. I came here 13 years ago. I'm an industrial designer of all the design classifications, I would say. I work with Sunbird Farrar, which was right here. The Guardian building is right over here. So we were born right there in 1934, 82 years ago. And Sunbird Farrar is the second longest standing independent design studio, industrial design studio in the entire nation, if not the entire world. Anyway, if you have any questions about me, I'll be here after the talk and we can talk more about anything you want, studio or myself or anything else. So for today, let's start. Means we are always surrounded by two elements. The world of nature, right? Means the literal, beautiful, fascinating, splendid world of nature. Any mammal, any insect, any flower, any bird is absolutely beautiful. They are functional too, but they're absolutely beautiful. But that's the world of nature. The other element is the sea of objects that we are surrounded with. We are always surrounded by objects, and basically, if you see, the objects are our way that gave us the edge as mammals in the entire pyramid of things, right? Weapons or tools or implements. We always based our lives on that. Cultivating soil. It might be exploring. Everything is dependent on objects, and that has made the progress more possible. Industrial revolution, right? Means typewriters and things that we don't use now. Sewing machines right now, we use them, but maybe not over here. By the way, even these were done by the studio a few years ago. Design of everyday objects. Mobility vehicles, shoes, staplers, tools in your garage, elements in your kitchen. Something as simple as this, a knife, shoes, wine glasses. We are always surrounded by objects. So have you ever thought how you reach them or how the objects reach you? There are two ways objects reach you. One is the non-persuasive way. That's where we all sit in, the pure, robust, solid, research-based design. And the other one is the persuasive one, the marketing, the commercials, the advertisements. And don't get me wrong, I love commercials too. Means we need truthful and meaningful commercials. Means every year I literally sit and see the super expensive Super Bowl commercials. But literally, for this year too, I still have to decide what was that literally, the puppy, monkey, baby thing. I am still hard to decide what I did there. See, the outrageous commercials or just viral marketing campaigns to get your eyeballs on your website, just to get thumbs up and following things is good. Only if your product is good. See, today, you have to understand that you should always try to squeeze the very essence of your brand promise, the basic brand proposition, the value proposition, and squeeze it in your product. If you don't do that, you might literally offer people the real sources of customer struggle, maybe erode your brand proposition, and maybe eventually start the death spiral of your product or your company. And literally today more than ever, the product is the true vehicle, not just the brand promise. The product itself is the true vehicle of your brand experience. Whatever you think it has to be. It might be frugal or it can be super expensive. It depends on what you want, but it has to be channeled to the products. And they themselves sit at the intersection, the exchange between the value, however you slice it, between the manufacturer and you. And when I say product or object, it can be anything. It can be a service, an experience, an kiosk, an artifact, a device, an implement, anything. You have to define what you do for your world. It might be a graphical collateral element. That's the product I'm thinking about. And if you, again coming back to the very nature of products, right, means they've always been the very clear and tangible expression of how we are. They'll always be the long-lasting markers of who we are and how we are on this globe. They literally are the containers of the art and the craft and society and culture. And so we have to differentiate between what is art and industrial design. I think I'm an industrial designer. We are born from artists. I think we all are here might be born from artists, but industrial design is not artist-based. If you want to define art in the most simplistic term, I think I will say it's self-expression. Design would be user empathy, and we will go over there. Self-expression might be like as simple as this. You'll have the paintings by Pablo Picasso, right? He draws a bull, that is a bull, it can sell for millions, but that's his self-expression you are going to buy for. But when you design products, literally, this might sound counterintuitive. A designer is never the user. You have to use that user empathy in understanding what he or she or that demographic really wants. What a millennial might want will be different. what a baby boomer, I'm pointing to you, Brendan, what you might be different. You have to understand what that persona needs and then define your product with the attributes that will be resonating with that kind of a demographics. If you forget anything of what I'm saying today, don't forget this slide. It is not what you make, it is what the users want. It's so simple, but it's so profound. Not that you are as a company, it might be a startup, it might be a big GM company or anything. If you are making something, that doesn't mean people will always want that. You have to understand, go back, try to see what they really want and crave for, and then come back and try to produce or manufacture that kind of an emotion or a product. So, is there any way or process or mechanics that you can literally try to see what users want? Users can be 7.2 billion people on the earth. So how I would try to define that in the next section is, we or myself or our studio, we always try to live in this world of beauty, behavior, culture, context and value. If you ingrain yourself to always be in that aura, on that environment, always be sensitive to these elements, I believe you will stand a good chance in starting your process. Whatever process or methodology might be applicable in your world, might be architectural world or might be a fashion world. You have to make sure you cultivate your mind and keep your mind fertile in those areas. First is beauty, literally. We saw about the nature. Beauty literally is the one that gives pleasure to your visual sense. It can be wow, it can be inspiring, it can be motivating, it can be all those things. It can be calm, it can be cool, it can be healing. But literally, it doesn't always need to be sexy or sculptural or form-based beauty. See, beauty inherently has its own utility. It has its own, I would say, functionality. Our founder, Montefiore, in 1959, we were still in the Guardian building back over there. He said, design is the articulation of quality. The thing is, if your product is good and if it doesn't look good, people will not consider it. It has to be a part of that. So, the onus is on the engineering world to make the product stable and safe and functional and useful. We get that, but on the top of that, you have to make sure that's the quality literally produces its own result. You look at any product. This is what we designed 2 years ago, or last year, for last Christmas thing. Any product has to express itself visually. See, it has to be understood on its own. It need not be explained. If it needs explanation, it's not working. As simple as that. And even Dieter Rams said, aesthetics is an utility of the product expression. It explains the structure of the product. It tells you where to go, where to hold, where is the handle, where is the input and output. All those things are already baked in the visual structure, and it assigns meaning to it. And your mind, literally, unbeknownst to you, has an emotional engine which tries to associate meaning to the things that you see before you need to start to think in the logical world. It is absolutely essential to make sure if it is good, if it works good, it has to look good in the proper context. And we can talk about those facets later. First was beauty. Second is behavior. We kind of know the rational and the emotional world, right? Rational is the world of cognition, all the conscious mental activities, all the remembering, understanding, learning, thinking. That's what we learn when we go to school or education or whatnot. But the other one is the emotional world. That's the area where we actually interpret and experience the world around us. And Marshall McLuhan is a Canadian philosopher and designer, graphic designer, and an expert on communication theory. He literally said, everybody experiences far more than he and she understands. So this part is far more than what he or she understands. And yes, it's experiences and not understanding, not the cognition one, that really helps, really matters our behavior. He actually goes further and saying it's not just the overt behavior, it is the subconscious, involuntary behavior. And again, this might sound completely new. Most of the actions that we do stem from the involuntary behavior. Most of the actions, even in the creative world too. That was the behavior. The next one is pretty interesting. The culture. Any product or object, it should reflect the pop culture around it. It again sounds pretty straightforward, but it's really pretty interesting to understand why it should matter. See, right at the center is the intersection of your product user interface. It can be interaction, interface, HMI, anything. That's literally happening in the center. It's in the category, it's in that industry. But we have to understand the matter of fact that the society influences and interprets the industry. no matter what the policies or the way the social meaning comes in, always influences that, and that actually steeps the culture, the long time kind of an container of what societal values are. The product itself has to reflect back all the way to the culture to bring those facets in your product, or I would say the aura of your product, to make sure it's good. So when I say all these things, it's for really making sure if you want your product to be a real hit, a market hit, or a classic, or all those things. You can do plenty of those things and just get by for 1 or 2 years and start selling your products. But if you really want it to take all the way to the edge, the best of what you can, you have to start reflecting the culture and the meanings of the culture in your product, or at least the thesis of your product. The next one is pretty interesting. I do not know if you have read the work of Stanley Milgram. Amazing person on psychology. He did some really radical experiments. Like if you are on Netflix, watch his movie, The Experimenter, in 1961. Really radical experiments. And he literally said, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said, there is a tendency to think that every person, every individual person over here, he or she will act from the ideas and feelings within. But the things change when the situation changes. If you are placed into a different situation, the power of the situation overrules what you think from your own ideas within. And it's pretty important for us to understand how your object or products gets distributed, or the language changes in a different context. And that's why you have to understand the context in how the product or object is going to be consumed. It just has to be done, or else it just changes the entire role of how the products are going to be seen. And the last but not the least is value. And the more and more we literally talk about value, the edge literally gets lost. But when I say value, it's not just the intrinsic value, right? You're designing anything, you're designing a garbage can. If you're always thinking of doing the next innovative, dynamic garbage can, you might just scrape and become successful. But when you say about instrumental value, if you always think the benefit about, I want to keep this place clean, I want to make sure it's hygienic, there are no flies around. If you think about those instrumental values and then come back and say, now, is that garbage can the right product to go and apply those benefits? And then you think in the fundamental root level of what really is need of the moment, then you have to produce that kind of an instrumental value. We all are designers or makers or tinkerers. You said it's very hard to explain that to an accountant guy and purchasing guy. You have to believe in that instrumental value and somehow bake it in your proposal of what else you're doing. But that's essentially what our role is in the entire scheme of things. When I say designers, we are the only people, any designer, graphics or credits, we are the only people who really are concerned about what people really need. It doesn't come in other sections of the disciplines that we learn with. So the onus is on us to make sure we take the instrumental level to the really next level. And I think that's those elements, the beauty, the behavior, the culture, the context, and the value. When you talk about the theme of the magic, and when I say magic, it's literally, it's hard to see it when it's everywhere. But the way I will try to devise it through all these things, if you're always keeping yourself perpetually sensitive to all these 5 basic elemental constructs, anything that you do will be purposeful, will be meaningful, and that itself is indistinguishable from magic, as Arthur C. Clarke said, not me. And that's what the proponents would be to understand how we are going to apply to the next stage. That was the second section. Before we go to the next section, is this okay? Is it gelling with you? It's something else? Any questions so far? We can always, it's a pretty nice, cozy crowd. If you have anything, raise hands and we can discuss about that, or we can discuss afterwards also. Is this okay? Steve, it's okay? It's a good birthday present? I like it. You have a question, Philip?
No, I was just giving you
Oh, thumbs up. I thought it was raise hands. Thank you. So design approach. So people always ask, like, how do you do it? Okay, that's one thing about the hypothesis of what you want to do. And I can share what we do very, very easily. Wait, the color looks different over here. So we are a studio, we are a small studio, 24 people studio. It's never about the numbers, it's all about the density of who you have. So what we do is we always make sure, as much as possible, we do barnstorming, getting the entire group together. Because we work on lots of products, same like you, we are all working with different clients. But we make sure we try to exchange, I would say, our ideas. Not the secrets, but the ideas, and literally cross-pollinate what we learn from different domains. Hey, we are using some elastomer in this headrest, and we use it for the new shoes we are doing. Things like that. Eventually, there will be a small group who will take through the strategic perspective of what needs to be done. So again, whatever we do, or whatever we all do, is always beautiful. But we make sure we go through a process of design strategy, not corporate strategy, not business strategy. We go through that process to make sure we understand the right problem and then make it beautiful. It's different. People always amuse themselves in saying designers are a bunch of kids with crayons and Photoshop. Yeah, we are good at that, but that doesn't mean we do not understand what problem needs to be solved, and we have to state it out to them. Then becomes the process of literally ideating things. And the best thing is literally, just like music, it's just sketches or diagrams or renderings and I would say concepts. It can be products, it can be literally automotive world. But if you see, we typically maintain to be monochromatic. We try to add color, but that's in the later stage because we don't understand the power of color. It is a huge bias. If you show me anything today in red, I'll just say, yeah, that looks good. You have to make sure how you propose your, I would say, proposals or concepts or your ideas or a hypothesis to your clients too. But there is a cadence and the process of how you go around and bring them up to the table. We believe a lot in physical prototyping, a lot, and I believe you should be doing that too, or you're already doing that too. There nothing can replace. Means we all are technological savvy. We all have amazing, I would say, CAD programs or any other latest techie programs. We do have it too, but we always start in the world of real expression, the real world of immersion. It might be paper modeling, it might be cardboard modeling, it might be simple plywood modeling. If the product is going to be in the future stage of a physical life, try to make it as often as you can. And by the way, we are not that far away. We are 35 minutes away. If you want, you can come and check our studios, no problem. Some of you have been to our studios, but just call me before. My cards are right here. But we can show you what we do. We have to cover some elements though. We tear down vehicles, bring in vehicles. So the range and complexity can go beyond. Working on CES vehicles or other vehicles, we have paint shops. I was talking with Brendan. Because of the paint shop, we have to be all the way out in the boonies. But that essentially is the process. How you start with your prototyping. So even the first, let's say the first sketch over there is our 2D prototype, and the first 3D model is our 2D, I would say, manifestation of the 3D prototype. But that's the process of starting with sketches, renderings, very rapid 3D models. Engineering too, it has to make sure we are not producing a $3 bill. We have to work with the engineering community to make sure what we are doing is stable and feasible and viable. Scale models, full scale models, and finally putting it together for a dealership show or a photography show or a real world show. That was the process as such. Any other things or any comments about that? Or we can go to the next one. Am I being too fast, too slow? We need to expand on something else. Guys, feel free. It's just us. The windows are locked. The door can be locked. You cannot jump down. Yes, sir. Vince.
I have a question. When you're prototyping and sketching, how much input do you get from users? Like, do you schedule user tests, interview people, see if what you're doing is what they want?
Great question. So whatever, it might not be evident over in the small process I showed right now, but anything and whatever we do is absolutely user design research based. Even if the client explicitly asks for it or not, we'll have to hide it. Normally, have to hide it in our proposal, but we do not do anything that's not based on qualitative research. So we understand the significance and statistical importance of qualitative. Also, we do that, but before that, it has to be design research. If you want to come back to the studio, we have a dedicated design research facility. We do the typical one-way mirror glass. We do it a lot. Get plenty of observations. And the thing is, that's a very good question. And there's only so much I could cover today, but. We believe in surveys, we believe in asking questions, we believe in doubting and questioning authority, all the proper needs for any studio. There's another thing that I showed you some very low fidelity modeling or models also. We use them as a part of design research. It's very difficult. Let's say we are doing a golf. I play golf, but I'm not a super golf playing person. So we went, when we were doing the golf card, we went to 5 different cities where there are really great golf players, super users as we call it. And you go there. But then that person, with all due respect to him or her, might not be the best articulating person, the best visualizing person. So you need to instigate and provoke them with the right design aids. And those design aids literally are sometimes a small physical model for him to understand, okay, now he can respond to it. They are great in making sure they have a dialogue, but for dialogue you need to have that other member too. So we use the facets of industrial design, including modeling. It can be wireframing or it can be physical modeling to get sure you get the proper response from a design research object. And that's pretty important. But apart from super user, we go to the other extreme. We also do analogous design research as such. So when I say analogous capabilities would be, let's say we are designing a cab for a tractor. It's a cab driver tractor. We can go and ask those people who work on it 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day. But we go to the extreme parts. Like let's go and try to interview an Indy race car driver who is in the same sitting situations and just doing left turns for 2.5 hours. What do they understand when they think about comfort? Me thinking about comfort for just a 1 hour drive is completely different than the person who tells about comfort and fatigue and what they really miss and what they really want. So you have to always make sure you compare and contrast what Charles Eames said many years ago. Always have to compare and contrast, and we use design research just for that. Great question. Yes, Sarah?
That big socket on the front of your eye.
I'm just like that. Videos. Big very
Your 5 constructs for making magic. Do you ever find yourself noticing them or building with them outside of the work that you're doing in the studio?
Outside of the professional work we are doing? So, absolutely yes. So, I think that's what we all designers are. We are always working in that area. We always should be working in that area in our subconscious mind. It might be a weekend, it might be the party you had yesterday when you're bicycling around, it might be some random thing we are doing on Sunday morning. But if you are properly allowing yourself to be reflective and absorbing those elements from the environment, that's what design studios are. Means there is always a big debate about why do they need external designers like us, right? Means they have their own big company and they have their own studios. They especially need it because we actually can go around and absorb those cultural memes. Memes are the informational box of culture which gets passed down from mind to mind. They are not captured anywhere in physical forms. So as far as we are bringing that as a part and parcel of a studio or your own entrepreneurial studio, that's what you need. And that's why you have to always have that 24/7 gateway open to be cognizant of those 5. We started with 5, there might be a couple of more, there are a couple of more, but predominantly there will be 5 as far as I know. So you always have to be in sync with what's happening around. I like the questions. Anything more? Yes, Brendan.
Has the advent of the 3D printer shortened the design process because you can go from graphics to solid device more quickly?
So this might sound a very wrong answer, but I'm never political correct. Answer is no. So it can help in certain aspects of model building, depending on, let's say I want to design a door handle. Okay, that might gel itself very nicely for what you're doing. But that's still one of the process to go and make that physical build. There are still so many other processes which are really faster than that. If you want to do completely interlockable, non-dialogue, not 3-part moving die and tool, then that's pretty okay. But it doesn't change the lead cycle a lot, because if you look at the entire shadow of everything, the design strategy, design research and industrial design. Out of industrial design, it might be those 5 elements I showed. In that would be the model building area. And within that, it might save some time, but it doesn't cast a good shadow on the entire process. But having said that, in certain ways, it depends on which world you are in, which category you are in, right? Let's say he's there with a coffee cup over there. So if you are in housewares and utensils area, chances are, yeah, that might change the way you are going to build your products and want to offer it as a distribution system. You work with Kinko's and FedEx and have them food grade quality 3D printers, and then change the entire process of your approach to make sure you can just shoot them designs, or they can have their own design. Means my kid, he's 7 years and he goes to his school and does some ugly coffee cups and brings them home. I have to use them. But if I can scan them and make them out of food grade material, my wife would love to have a set of those for her next party. So it depends on the category. If that's your category you are, that's going to disrupt you a lot. If you are designing the laptops over there, maybe not, next 50 years it might not. So it's not just the model building. I will look at that as a disruptor for the entire way of you doing business. So an Nikon camera or a Canon you're using might not be right now, but the accessories on it, absolutely yes. It depends on how you want to use it and leverage it. But it's a pretty interesting vector. Very interesting vector. Anything more? Yes, sir.
What's the most challenging material that you had to work with?
Most challenging?
Yeah, material.
Material.
Yeah.
Material. Interesting. I always get a question about the category or the product. So right now we are talking about lightweighting is everywhere in any world you want. The carbon nanofilarians basically how can be used as a superconductor, but super lightweight and super tensile. But again, the applications of those are pretty small base as such. But that's a pretty interesting material that we should be looking in more as such. But that doesn't mean. Let me try to. So that's the answer I would say. We're talking about materials. The way we look at materials, the approach is somebody comes to us. Let's say John Deere, and we are working with them. Like, hey, and they are not. I should not use the name, but they are not asking this. They will come and say, we want to reduce the weight, right, of any vehicle or their tractors or their combines. So just taking the deck, which is just a stamped piece of metal right now, and putting that process in the plastic world, you can reduce weight, absolutely. But that's not the way to think. The way to think is, okay, the material is going to be an elastomer. How to understand the attributes of that plastic or elastomer so that I can use and actually use that as a core competency to base my design on. So if it is transparent, can I use the transparency in something else? Does it have anything else that can be offered to the material world? So material is good to use, but not just to copy or paste, or not just to replicate, or not just to use instead, but understanding the inherent qualities of that. Steve Jobs did that. The first candy-colored Macs he brought in, he did not just go with this color and just use that as a plastic. He used the colors. He completely started a newer trend in that world. That's how you literally go and take advantage and leverage what the material brings to it, rather than just trying to save weight or something. That's again the difference between intrinsic and instrumental. You can always save material cost and the process and less fasteners, but what else you can bring in so other people can't just copy it. They have to literally make effort to copy. It will get copied 5, 6 down the lines, but at that time you have to go and change the newer philosophy. That's an interesting question. Yes, ma'am. I don't know your name yet.
Aaron. So to go back to sort of more from the beginning of your talk, you had that slide and you said that there's one thing we can remember, it's not what you want, it's what the user wants. So,
And you remember that, I'm so happy.
Yeah, well, it's something that we struggle with in our work day to day.
Why are you giving her a hard time? She's struggling. No?
Because we work for a web development and design company.
Okay.
And so we build websites, among other things. And oftentimes we go to our clients and we say, oh, we do the prototyping just like you. We do a wireframe, then we move into design, then we move into the actual building.
Yep.
And at some point, usually around the design, we get pushback, right, from the client saying, I don't like it this way, I want it this way. And we say, we understand this, but we're doing this a specific way for your user experience. It's not actually about you, client, it's about your users and who's going to come to your website. And so this is a big pushback that we get. I don't know if you have anything to comment on, but it's just interesting.
And that's a very valid point. And for us as a community of designers, we'll always get that push. It's always been there. We also face, even though we are pretty good in what we do, we always get that pushback. But you have to always make sure. See, I talk about magic, I talk about meaningfulness. Meaningfulness is one area, but it has to finally help them sell their product. If it is a capitalist industry, and that's what it is, and you have to give value for the stakeholders, you have to make money, they have to sell. That's the final marketing or resolution of design you are doing. So the thing is, designers bring a lot to the table. I'm not discounting that, but we are not the only leg on the stool. Those guys, with all due respect, will also bring in their business sense, their economical sense, their kind of an other operation sense, which brings in that factor of little bit more temperament of how fast you want to go. Sometimes you have to blend that together. So it's the three principles, right? You talk of beauty, that's overall. It's about usefulness and usability. As such, that's really good. The human factors, the needs that Vince was pointing out. The other one is the feasibility and the making of it. That's what we were saying, materials for manufacturing. The last one is business viability. You have to make sure your design strategy has to gel with your business strategy. So you have to take that in a grain of salt. But that's to start with. The second is, if they are saying or you're promoting that we will give you 3 options, or what you do in your world, 3 or 4, hopefully not more than that. You have to go you have to do one on your own. We do that. So if say we are going to do 4 options, according to the cadence that they want, we will do that. But then we also, on our own time, on the designer's time, have the 5th one also, that this is exactly what you want based on the parameters, but this is what the real users want. Can we do that? If you have to pitch that in the same way. And what we do in our studio is, we actually put an award for this. If a designer goes on his or her own time and puts a completely, not a mild, but a wild idea that's really meaningful and purposeful and has a cause and benefit to it, and he does that, he will get an award, a good cash award for that. So it depends on how you incentivize your team also, and how you bring that in a very good way. You don't want to lose the client, you don't want to do that, but you want to let them know in moving the needle. They will never go all the way over here, but you get from 10 to 20 or 30, that's a big step. The next project, they will say, okay, now I believe in what they are doing, and let me see what they want to see. So it will always be a growing pain, but you have to start acting on it right now for the next client or something.